A lady called her gynecologist and asked for an emergency appointment. The receptionist said to come right in. She rushed to the office and was ushered right into an examination room. The doctor came in and asked about her problem. She was very shy about her emergency problem and asked the gynecologist to please examine her vagina. So the doctor started to examine her. He stuck up his head after completing his examination. "I'm sorry, miss," he said, "but removing that vibrator is going to involve a very lengthy, delicate, and expensive surgical operation. I'm not sure I can afford it," sighed the young woman. "But while I'm here, could you just replace the batteries?" Old couple had been married for 50 years. They were sitting at the breakfast table one morning when the old gentleman said to his wife, "Just think, we've been married for 50 years. "Yeah," she replied. "Just think. 50 years ago we were sitting here at this breakfast table together." "I know," the old man said, "but we were probably sitting here stark 50 years ago." "Well," Granny snickered, "what do you say? Should we strip?" So the two stripped to the buff and sat down at the table. "You know, honey," the little old lady said, "my nipples are as hot for you today as they were 50 years ago." "I wouldn't be surprised," replied Gramps. "One is in your coffee and the other one is in your porridge." Priest, who has to spend the night in a hotel, asked the girl in reception to come up to his room for dinner. After a while, he makes a pass at her, but she stops him and reminds him that he's a holy man. "It's okay," he replies. "It's written in the Bible." After a wild night of she asked to see where in the Bible it says it's okay. The priest rolls over, takes Gideon out of the desk by the bed and shows her the first page. On it, someone has scrawled, "The girl in reception will anyone." A blonde and a brunette walk into a bar. As they sit down, the brunette notices a guy checking out the blonde. So the brunette decides to go and talk to this guy. She walks up to him and says, "I see you've been checking out my friend. You know, the blonde sitting over there, she's pretty, isn't she?" The guy responds, "Oh man, she's just gorgeous, absolutely beautiful." The brunette says, "Well, for $50 I can arrange for you to smell her crotch." The guy says, "Well, yes, of course." He pulls out the money and hands it to her. She takes it and breathes in his face. Ethel loved to speed around the nursing home in her wheelchair, taking corners on one wheel and getting up to maximum speed on the long corridors. Because the poor woman was one sandwich short of picnic, the other residents tolerated her, and some of the males actually joined in. One day, Ethel was speeding up one corridor when a door opened and Mad Mickey stepped out with his arm outstretched. "Stop!" he shouted in a firm voice. "Have you got a license for that thing?" Ethel fished around in her handbag and pulled out a Kit Kat wrapper, then held it up to him. "Okay," he said, and away Ethel sped down the hall. As she took the corner near the TV lounge on one wheel, Weird Harold popped out in front of her and shouted, "Stop! Have you got proof of insurance?" Ethel dug into her handbag, pulled out a drink coaster and held it up to him. Harold nodded and said, "Carry on, ma'am." As Ethel neared the final corridor before the front door, Crazy Craig stepped out in front of her, stark naked, holding a very sizable erection in his hand. "Oh, good grief," said Ethel. "Not the breathalyzer again." The woman was having a daytime affair while her husband was at work. One wet and nasty day, she was in bed with her boyfriend when, to her horror, she heard her husband's car pull into the driveway. "Oh my God, hurry, grab your clothes and jump out of the window. My husband's home early." I can't jump out of the window. It's raining out there. If my husband catches us in here, he'll kill us both. She replied, he's got a hot temper and a gun, so the rain is the least of your problems. So the boyfriend scoots out of bed, grabs his clothes and jumps out of the window. As he ran down the street in the pouring rain, he quickly discovered he had run right into the middle of the town's annual marathon. So he started running. A man staying at a nice London hotel finds a card in the telephone box offering services. He calls the number and says, I'd like some mild. Is that okay? It all sounds very interesting, sir, the lady replies. But you might like to dial 9 for an outside line first. Man was in a terrible car accident and his manhood was mangled and torn from his body. His doctors assured him that modern medicine could give him back his manhood, but that his insurance wouldn't cover the surgery since it was considered cosmetics. The doctor said the cost would be $3,500 for small, $6,500 for medium, $14,000 for large. The man was sure he would want a medium or large, but the doctor urged him to talk it over with his wife before he made any decision. The man called his wife on the phone and explained their options. The doctor came back into the room and found the man looking dejected. Well, what have the two of you decided? Asked the doctor. The man answered, she'd rather have a new kitchen. Man picks up a and takes her back to his room. She strips off all her clothes and all he does is stare at her. What, honey? Is this the first cat you've seen since you crawled out of one? No, it's just the first one I've seen big enough to crawl back into. Beautiful warm spring day and a man and his wife are at the zoo. She's wearing a cute, loose-fitting, sleeveless pink sprint dress with straps. As they walk through the ape exhibit and pass in front of a very large gorilla, the gorilla goes ape. He jumps up on the bars, holding on with one hand and 2 feet, grunting and pounding his chest with the free hand. He's obviously excited at the pretty lady in the wavy dress. The husband notices his excitement and suggests that his wife tease the poor fellow. The husband suggests she pucker her lips, wiggle her bottom, and play along. She does, and Mr. Gorilla gets even more excited, making noises that would wake the dead. Then the husband suggests that she let one of her straps fall. She does, and Mr. Gorilla is just about to tear the bars down. Now try lifting your dress up your thighs, the husband says. This drives the gorilla absolutely crazy. Suddenly the husband grabs his wife by the hair, rips open the door to the cage, slinks her in with the gorilla and says, "Now tell him you have a headache." Once in medieval times, there was a king who was getting sort of bored after dinner one night. He decided to hold a contest of who at the court had the mightiest weapon. The first knight stood up and proclaimed that he had the mightiest weapon. He pulled down his pants and tied a 5-pound weight around it. The weapon doth rose. The crowds cheered. The woman swooned. The children waved multicolored banners. And the band played appropriate music. Another knight stood up and yelled that he had the mightiest weapon. He dropped his pants and tied a 10-pound weight to himself. The weapon doth rose. The crowds cheered. The woman swooned. The children waved multicolored banners. And the band played appropriate music. After several more knights tried to prove their superiority, the king finally spoke out. "I have the mightiest weapon of all of them." He dropped his pants and tied not a 10-pound, not a 20-pound, not ever a 30-pound, but a 40-pound weight to himself. The weapon doth rose. The crowds cheered. The women swooned. The children waved multicolored banners. and the band played God Save the Queen.